Are you in the mood for something a bit odd and atmospheric? The Amazon original Tales from the Loop might just fit that bill for you. It's quirky and beautiful, but is it good? This is a sci-fi anthology series, and what it does is it takes a look at a town that has a lab built underneath the entire town. And inside that lab is also a machine called the Loop. And what that does is it examines the mysteries of the universe, and it's meant to unlock them, or at least to try and unlock them. But also, because of its placement, it allows for oddities and weird things to happen above the ground. Now, there's 8 episodes in this series, and it is an anthology, but they are all tied together slightly. And how I mean is not only just you have the town that this entire series takes place in, but all of the characters come in contact with each other throughout the series. And so you have this recurring people, but they're not always the central focus of it. So you have one episode where it's this kid, and then the next episode, the kid has talked to somebody, but now this person is the focus of that episode, and the kid's not even seen. And so it just happens throughout that, and all 8 episodes work in that fashion. And by the end of it, yes, it is. You do see how they are all interconnected, and you begin to connect some of the dots as well as it goes along, which also helps you uncover clues through each episode. So not every single thing by the end is an absolute shock or surprise. And that's not a negative to it. It just means that, hey, you were paying attention and they've given you all of these clues. And so when you see this person and you begin to see what's happening, you go, ooh, I bet that's that. This is a beautiful series to look at and to watch. I mean, the cinematography is outstanding. The idea from the series came from an artist and his paintings, and they inspired the stories, and I believe he even wrote some books that also had some of the stories with his paintings in there. And so because you have something that starts from a piece of art, then it helps to make something that we do then watch just as beautiful and just as awesome. And I think they do a really good job in this. I mean, they take this town and they put us kind of in the mid-80s, mid-1980s that is, but it has a slight futuristic tone to it because even though this is the mid-80s, because of the technology and the lab that is under the ground, we get things that we normally wouldn't see at that era. They also employ some special effects in this, and they use them sparingly. And I think that really helps to just add to the beauty of the shots, but also to the convincingness of just what we're watching. Like, we're not asked to go so far out of the realm of possibility where it was like, oh, well, that wouldn't happen. And so it breaks us out of that reality of what we're seeing already, the beauty that we see. Soundtrack in this is also amazing. I mean, it sounds like it could come off of a George Winston album. It's moving and melodic, dramatic, but even times melancholy. And so it really works to play with our emotions. And that's a huge thing and of huge importance to the series because each of the episodes rely more on the soundtrack and more on the visuals, and more of the acting of the actors without dialogue. So their body movements, their facial expressions, just their body language, that is really what drives the majority of what we see. Yes, there is dialogue and it is important, but each episode is not heavy with dialogue. And so you fill an hour's time with maybe 10, 15 minutes of dialogue. The rest of it has to be something else. Otherwise, our brains get bored of just seeing it. And so how do they do that? They play the soundtrack, and it's beautiful, and it moves us, and it manipulates our emotions into how we're supposed to feel, and it conveys everything that we're supposed to be feeling through just all of our senses. Well, not touch, because that would be weird if it came out of the screen and hit us. And I guess not smell also, but sometimes we smell, or the popcorn that I'm eating, or whoever happens to be sitting next to me. And in quarantine time, I mean, who knows? When was the last time you showered? Even though there's not a lot of dialogue, when there is, sometimes the delivery of it combined with the awesome visuals and the odd and moving soundtrack make me feel like I'm watching a David Lynch production. It's odd, it's quirky, sometimes it's stilted and off-putting. And that also leads me to one thing that I didn't really like. And it seemed like almost all of the characters had an overabundance of timidness to them. Like they were just so unconfident in themselves and in the way that they would deliver their lines, it just became an annoyance to me personally. Because I understand that there are timid people, and we don't always speak with confidence. I don't always speak with confidence. So it's not that. That's not the annoying part. It's just that it seemed like almost everybody that we ever came in contact with in this series spoke that way. And so all of the delivery, that becomes the annoyance, that I don't have anybody who's a strong character then, and it grates on me a little bit. Like, I want somebody to be able to stand up and just say what they want or say what they're looking for, versus this gosh, we've all talked to that person, right? We want to slap them on the back of the head, spit it out, just say what you want. You're wasting time, and it's frustrating. Almost all of the episodes, in one way or another, deal with the exertion of control, or at least the attempt to control something or have control over something, whether that be in people or circumstances, which that struggle for control then leads to great stories. Except most of them are not uplifting. I didn't leave each episode with a sense of hope or joy. I mean, most of them were content to stuff me in the bell jar and leave me there to stew. Because as you can imagine, the thought of control or exerting control over something, especially when we can't control it, where it's really just a myth in our head that we believe that we have some control over something, I mean, that begins to play with you. And when you see those stories played out over and over again with differing results and different setups too, that some of them are not even overt in their control. I mean, one of them definitely is because the episode is actually called Control. But if you look for that theme, you do see it through most of the episodes, and the outcomes are what really add to the weightiness and the heaviness of each story. Now, there is a lot of vagueness also to the overall story, and that surrounds the lab and the machine, the loop. I could have used a lot more detail in there. I mean, it didn't hurt the things that we got to see and the stories and how they affected the people. But just from a curiosity standpoint, I would really like to know more of what's going on inside this lab. What is this machine that they have created or found? And see, I'm even a little vague on what that is. And we do get to see this floating black orb that's down there. And what exactly is that? Do they know? Is this what they've been spending all of their time researching and examining? We don't know. We're not given that information. We get little glimpses here and there of what it can do, but it would be so awesome to learn more. And I understand that that's also not the point of the series, that the series was really to look at all of these relationships, all of the characters, all of the people, and what the effects of their exertion of control or just their choices in life and the outcomes that come from those choices. But it still would have been fun, or at least maybe in subsequent seasons or episodes, to learn a little bit more about what goes on below the surface, because everything that we saw now takes place above the ground, and that's still fun to watch. Probably the best way to look at this series is to think of it as like Twilight Zone episodes, where they are cautionary tales asking us to examine why we want to control something. And if we do want to control it, are we willing to face the consequences that come with that, even if we can't choose all of the outcomes that come as a ripple effect? Like, okay, I can have control over this, which means it's probably going to have this outcome, but I don't get to control what happens past this point, and I may not like what all that entails. Maybe I will, but chances are, because of that whole butterfly effect, probably not. There's sex, nudity, profanity, and violence. I give Tales from the Loop 4 out of 5 couches. What's an atmospheric movie or series that you've been watching, or one that you can recommend? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.